What's going on, guys? I'm Matt Ryce, and today we're going to take my 1987 Buick Regal and turn it into the ultimate daily driver, cruiser, hot rod, muscle machine. Oh, we're getting some fuel out of there. The Buick is a project I picked up recently. I got it a couple weeks ago and I got it for a steal. It was only 2,500 bucks. Brought it home and I really wanted to just run and drive and cruise the thing. Come to find out, the transmission was no good. So we went ahead and ripped the motor out of it in preparation to get the trans out, which led us down the downward spiral of I can never be happy with what I've got. I had a bunch of parts laying around and I decided that the best thing that we could do is put an LS in this thing. Now, inevitably, it was going to get an LS anyway. It was just a matter of time, but we needed to get the trans fixed first and all that. Figured it'd be a little easier to do it all at once. The motor that we put together for this thing was an old, rusty, crusty 4.8 Gen 3 LS motor that I had sitting in the corner. We didn't do anything to the bottom end. I found a cam on Facebook Marketplace real cheap, so I shoved that in there. We had some head gaskets, some head studs. We had some heads with Texas Speed, springs, retainers, and that kind of stuff. A bunch of mixed matched parts, but we threw it all together and built this little motor. We're gonna top it off with a carbureted intake. I'm not a big carburetor guy, but the car is already set up for that. I want this thing running and driving as fast as possible, so we're gonna use what we've got to make it work. Also, we already had this awesome nitrous express plate on here. Solenoids that could spray up to 500-600 horsepower on a wet kit. We're not going to jump right into spraying the thing, but if you know me, you know I'm going to race it, so we might as well put it on there while we got it. I'm excited to throw this thing in, but first we got to tackle some stuff in the engine bay, get the old trans out. There's a lot of work to be done before we can go shoving new stuff in there. I want to give a huge shout out to Eric, who sent us this awesome Eastwood parts washer after he saw a video of us washing parts in my kitchen sink. Really appreciated. We did clean the heads. We cleaned a lot of different parts with the parts washer, so I really appreciate him sending that to us. If you guys have anything you want to send to us to make our lives a little easier out here in the garage, we've got an address in the description down below. Go ahead and send it our way. I'm sure we could use it. I went ahead and pressure washed the engine bay. Got that kind of ready because we need this thing to be a little bit cleaner. We've got the engine out of it. It's the best time to go ahead and get it done. I'm gonna go ahead and get started on ripping out the trans, and then once the trans is out, hopefully the rest of this is dry enough that I can hit it all with black spray paint, make it look nice again, and we can go from there on installing the new parts. I'm getting ready to jack this thing up and put it on some jack stands, and the internet is a powerful tool. I saw this the other day, I forget, Instagram, TikTok, wherever. I never knew this, and all of you guys in the comments that say you already knew this, other than the people who saw the video in the last week, are liars. These jack stands, the top comes right out. There's a tab on the side of these things that apparently you're supposed to hammer in. I've never done it, but when you hammer in that tab, it stops it from coming apart. So this way, you know, I know you've been trying to jack something up and you pull it to try to get it to its farthest one, and then it's too far, it comes straight out. Apparently, knock that tab in, all your problems are solved. I love the internet. So we've got the 200 DAR4 M56. I don't know what this trans is, but it could have been a good trans, I'm sure. Didn't have any forward gears. Had reverse though, which was weird. And it's got the cable that you got to adjust. You know, there's a couple things about this that for simplicity's sake don't really work for us. Now, I know you're probably thinking, what are we going to do to replace it? I do have another one of these that came out of Mallory's El Camino, and it moved under its own power. I don't know how good it is, but it did move, and we were able to drive it around a little bit while the motor was knocking. I don't think I want to do all that. As much as I'd love to have overdrive and everything else, I think the best thing for this is going to be something we've had laying around. The key here is using what we've got laying around, no matter how ridiculous it may be. Let's go look at the other trains. And here we've got a replacement. What I've got here is an FTI level 3.5 with the SFI bell housing. Now this trans came out of my white Camaro, and I was always kind of a little bit unsure about it, so I took it over to Josh at Jackson Lane Transmissions. He went through it, he confirmed what I said. This thing was burnt up real bad. He said either it was low on fluid or the shifter was out of adjustment. I think it was the shifter, just because I did have some question of it when I was racing the Camaro. This thing is crazy. I mean, billet aluminum valve body, trans brake, you know, it's a 400, it's a big beastly thing. Has the bell housing on it from after we did the giant wheelie and I cracked the bell housing, we put a bell housing on it. So this thing is gonna be way more than what this Regal needs. But I could spend more money, try to find another Power Glide, another TH350, and another something. But what I saw online is that the rear mounting point of this is the same distance as that. So we should be able to put this directly in its place and have no issue. Now, really, really overkill for what we're doing. But like I said, you guys know I'm gonna race the thing. So I wanna see what we can do. There's a little bit of the fitting is jacked up here. I'm gonna go ahead and swap that out and see what we can do to go ahead and get this thing mounted in the Regal. It's got trans brake, manual valve body, everything. It's going to be very, very simple. And the reason I keep going back to simple is I want to be able to drive this thing. I want a street cruiser hot rod that I can beat on, and maybe using an overkill part is a little crazy here, but it's going to keep us from breaking it. I mean, this thing should be the last thing that we ever have an issue with on the road. And I've really been interested in those drag and drive events. Actually, the guy from Midwest Drags called me and invited me out. I'm not saying that we're going to do it yet, but if we have a car that I feel good about and that we can do it with, why not? So it's definitely going to see some track time. It's not just going to be a cruiser. We're definitely taking it racing. We're definitely making it faster every step along the way. So it seems like a good idea to just use the 400 we've got. Let's muscle this heavy thing in there. With the transmission out, I wanted to take advantage of the fact that I could actually reach the other side of these bolts. So I pulled the center console out, and we've got our new shifter about getting ready to go in. I've got one hole that lines up, but I'm gonna have to drill some other ones, so let me mark those and drill those out. Then we'll have the shifter mounted. I do have to trim a little bit of the center console. It's not gonna work the way I want it to just yet, but maybe I'll find some kind of way. Or I've been looking at some new programs and stuff. I've actually been learning how to design some stuff, so I was thinking maybe I could design something that we could 3D print that would be the new cover, since the old one isn't going to work. But for now, we want to at least get it mounted up in the way, and then I got some wiring to do with the trans brake, neutral safety switch, all of that, and we can throw the console back in, and at least from a distance it'll look pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and drill these all the way out for regular bolts. They used to have self-tappers in here, and I've done it with self-tappers before, but what happens is the self-tapper ends up getting loose, then your shifter's wiggling. I know the one in the Nova is doing it a little bit, so I got to do that one too. But for now, we'll get this one bolted down with some good bolts, and then I can run an actual bolt through there, lock washer, everything, and we know it's not going to go anywhere. All right, now all the bolts are tight. The line is in. Look at that. Goes through all the gears. Doesn't feel bound up or nothing. Obviously, we don't have the trans hooked up yet, but 1, 2, 3, yep. Should be good to go. Now I'm gonna leave the center console off of here for now because I do have some wiring to do. I'm gonna have to wire the ignition. I've got a few things to wire, so I'm gonna leave it all exposed for now so I can come back when I get to the wiring point of it. But I think now we can at least slide the trans in, start getting that in place, and then drop the motor in. I think I did make a mistake when I talked about this trans earlier. I think I called it a level 3.5. It's actually a level 4. So what does that mean? We really shouldn't break it with what we're doing. It's gonna go in the same way the other one came out. We're gonna slide it under. Hopefully have enough clearance. And then we can get it up and in, put it on a jack stand, a jack, and then we can lower the front end, drop the motor in, bolt them together, and everything should be in place for a little while. All right, I've got the transmission hung up, and this is just temporary. It's just hanging there. I do have the one bolt in the trans mount just to hold it, because now we can go ahead, lift this whole thing up, get it off the jack stands, and bring the car down some so I can work on getting the motor in next. Now that we got the car back on the ground and I've got the trans jacked up, supported by the jack, everything should be good here. I picked up another converter off of Facebook Marketplace. Actually, this came from a deal from a guy who knew I was looking for one. It's got the LS snout on it, the extension on the snout, and it's an FTI converter, aluminum something, mechanical diode. I don't know. It's pretty stout, but I don't think it's going to be the perfect converter for this combination. I will tell you guys, I'll give you the sneak peek. We have some very special converters coming on the way. Now, I've always wanted to do a SHITBOX Supply converter, something budget friendly, street friendly, that kind of stuff. And I finally found somebody to make them for us. So he's sending us a sample. He's making one right now, and we're gonna get it probably within the next week or two. That'll be the sample, that'll go in this car, and then if that works out and I'm happy with it, we're gonna go ahead and produce a run of those so that way we can sell them SHITBOXsupply.com. For now, we want to run and drive. So let's get this thing in here. Where are my tangs? I can't see them. And we'll get it running and driving. In the interest of keeping this project a budget project, I took the motor mounts off the small block Chevy, put them on some adapter plates. We're just going to send it like that for now. I'd like to do a solid motor mount in it, but for now this is going to work. Plus, I don't think this is the motor that's going to stay in the car forever anyway. So let's get it ready to drop in. I also have a really nice billet flex plate that a buddy of mine had laying around. Wouldn't work because it didn't match his converter. The bolt pattern didn't. So I ended up trading up some SHITBOX line and fittings to get this. Once again, way too nice for the project, but it's what was available at the time. Alright, so I was able to get both of the bolts started in the motor mounts. The problem that we're having is that the trans is still too far away, and it's still too far away for where we have it on the mount. Now there's a reason I wanted to do this. I kind of did this on purpose, or was trying to. My buddy gave me a drive shaft because the TH400 yoke is different, right? So when we line these drive shafts up, this drive shaft that he gave me, which is also a little bit larger in the girth, handle a little more power, that one looks to be about an inch longer. So when I put the motor mounts on, these plates are adjustable and you can pick different holes. I did not pick the one that makes it go all the way back and sets the motor all the way back. That's going to be a problem. What we're going to have to do is I'm going to have to pick this whole thing up, take the motor mounts and move them to what would be the most forward position on this mount, but would set the motor the farthest back. In order to do that, we're going to have an issue here with the coil mount. So I'm just going to take off this valve cover for now. What I'll likely do is just zap that coil mount off, because I don't want to get rid of the AC and all of that stuff and the heater. I'd like to keep that. It's going to be, you know, street car. I want to do street car things with it. I don't know we're ever going to do AC, but I am going to show you guys how we can set up power steering. Power steering is still going to work. So I've got
a little bit more work to do. I got to lift and readjust and do everything again, but should be worth it. We're making progress. I also got the headers snuck in there because they can kind of be a pain sometimes in these G bodies when you've got the motor already in, so they're just sitting in place so that way we can get to them pretty easily. Fun fact about those headers, they actually came out of the Nova. I had them on the Nova when I was doing nitrous spray it to the moon stuff, and they are G body headers, but they also fit in the Nova, which just goes to show you how many combinations headers like that can fit into. I'm gonna get to work on this, and then I'll check back in with you guys when I have it all figured out and can actually mate the trans to the motor. The motor's back far enough. We got everything fixed. We'll go from there.
All right, I took the motor back out. Actually, the motor, the trans, the converter, everything came back out and went back in, but now it's finally in place. I've got a couple bell housing bolts started. It feels good. I can definitely tell you there's gonna be some tricky bell housing bolts. There's a couple things that are a little bit of an issue. Factory truck pan fits in this thing amazingly well. No need to buy an aftermarket oil pan. It might be a little bit low, but as you can see right now, it looks like the aluminum headed LS is a little bit lighter than the small block was, so the suspension is sitting up higher anyway. I'm gonna take a break for tonight. We're gonna get back on it tomorrow and see if we can wrap this thing out at least to the point where we can fire it up. That's what I'm hoping to get to. The finish line is firing it up. Then we got to check the drive shaft length. We got to connect the converter. I got to run a trans cooler. There's a lot of stuff still left to do, but we're getting much closer to firing this thing up, and I cannot wait. Alright, well, I've been working on getting the motor together. We got some headers on. I got spark plugs in. I'm starting to figure out if we can get this thing fired up today. Mallory's been working on trimming out this center console piece where I thought that we weren't going to be able to use this piece anymore and I was going to have to 3D print something or whatever. Mallory came through, trimmed it, made it look nice and neat, and now we've got full range of motion. This thing used to be all hacked up and looked like somebody was chewing on it, so this looks very nice just because of the fact it's neat, organized, and I'm ready to hook up the shifter. We still got access to the wires. I still got wiring to do, but just another project knocked out. All right, we've been chipping away at it. I've got coils on. We've got all the spark plugs in, plug wires in. Mallory went ahead and hooked us up the throttle cable, so we've adjusted that. I've got the MSD 6014. We're going to use this box. I had it laying around. I wanted to put it inside the car, but the plugs are too large to get through the firewall, and I don't want to cut a big giant hole in the firewall, at least not just yet. So we're going to stick it on over here for now. That'll be out of the way, but I ran the wiring all underneath the intake and everything, just trying to keep it nice and clean. I've got to make a couple fuel lines to go from the pressure regulator to the carb, and really that's some electrical work and we could fire it up, so we're getting really pretty close. I'm just trying to chip away at it. I think I might go ahead and get the water pump hooked up and all of that so I can show you guys how the power steering is going to work. I forget which one it is, if it's the ones on the back of the power steering pump or the one that goes into the steering box itself, but I've done it before on a G-body where I just took them out, swapped them with the LS stuff, and thread pitch, everything was correct, everything went right in. So I'm going to go ahead and see if maybe we can try to get that knocked out too, and that way get this thing really, really complete, and then we can fire it on up. It's occurred to me that I put this junkyard motor together, really didn't know much about it. It was really pretty rusty and crummy and everything else, and I was getting ready to do a bunch more work. We've still got, you know, quite a few hours of stuff left to do to this thing, but we should probably hear it run first. Before I take it all the way home, we should make sure that the thing runs, doesn't make any crazy noises, all that kind of stuff, just so that way I know that it's worth moving forward on this project. Plus we can use the motivation. It's been a few long days, a lot of parts, a lot of running back and forth. I still need more stuff, but I've got the ignition box temporarily hooked up. It is all hooked up to the key, and we don't have any water pump on it or anything yet, so I can't run it too long, but we should be able to fire this thing up and hear it run and make sure that it's a halfway decent motor. Ready, babe?
I'm ready.
All right. Still starts with the key, does everything like it's supposed to. Now I don't feel so bad about doing all the rest of the work that's going to be required to get this thing done. I did take a look earlier. Our exhaust, our old dual exhaust, comes like, I don't know, 4 or 5 inches short maybe, but that leaves me enough room. I could put a V-band on there. I gotta weld the exhaust up, do all that. I still have to finish mounting the trans because I gotta drill a new hole in the trans mount. We gotta get a drive shaft figured out. I need to get accessories going. There's a whole lot of stuff to be done before we can even try to put this thing in gear and move it. But it sounds good.
Sounds good.
It does sound good. Oh man. All right, back to work we go. All right, so I've got the new power steering pump mounted, and I took the line off. It looks like whatever size fitting this is, 5/8 wrench, is the same as it is on the small block Chevy. So I think that both ends are the same. What I'm going to try to do, just for ease of install and simplicity, is take this pressure line out and hook it up to the LS pump. I've done this before. I just can't remember which way I did it, what combination of lines I used. If I used the LS line into the pump, the steering box that was there, or if I just swapped it on the pump like this. Either way, it's going to be a little bit weird just because of the angle. It's not going to look the greatest because it's going to be at a funky angle, but if it works, it doesn't matter, and it's free because we already have it, so we don't have to go get another line made and all that. And then the return line is just a rubber hose that's hose clamped, so that's easy. We'll just stick a piece of AN line over that, some hose clamps, and call it a day. Yeah, that seal has seen better days, but they look to be exactly the same. The only thing is that this seal kind of sucks, so I may take this seal off and swap them just so that way we don't have leaks. Question is going to be, can I get it where it needs to go? Which right now is not looking too hot, because it needs to go in like this, and I don't think we got enough hose to do it, so I may have to pull it and swap out. This one's a little more flexible, a little longer. Yeah, I think we're gonna have to swap. So there you go, there's your answer. Use the hose that comes with the LS power steering pump, the pressure hose, and it'll all bolt together. Take the small block Chevy one, throw it away, have a nice day. So the LS hose goes right into the gearbox, no problem. Unfortunately, I had to cut the other one because it had been so rounded so many times that I couldn't get a wrench on it. It wasn't working. So hopefully we still have one for your car. We'll have to order one. That goes right in there. I'm gonna leave it a little loose. It's gonna be interesting to get that hose hooked up. See if the fuel pump works. It does. Alright, the fuel pump works. We're going to get to a point here, guys, where I've got some good news and some bad news. I think it's best we, well, we'll just start with the good news. If all of this works, we didn't have any fuel leaks, did we? Didn't look like we had any fuel leaks. We're gonna go ahead and make sure this thing fires up and runs, and then I'll start telling you guys about the unfortunate bad news that we've got to deal with anyway.
No.
Alright, so let's... Oh, we're getting some fuel out of there. Whoa. smoking. There might be some old residual stuff on the headers. Yeah. Yeah, it looks like probably just some old residual oil, fluids, and that kind of stuff on the header. Well, here's where we're at. The good news is I've gotten it to a point where it fires up and it runs. This fuel system is not finished yet. I just kind of had to throw it together for the moment being to make it do just that and actually let it run more than 5-10 seconds at a time by filling the bowls up. The bad news is we gotta stop. This project, although I thought I had everything I need, we've run into a number of problems. Number one, looking at right here, I'm not sure that I was right about the power steering, and when I went to try to thread the power steering line on, I ended up either cross-threading it or it was the wrong thread pitch, whatever the case may be, and then that threw me for a loop. Drive shaft, I got the drive shaft, but for some reason the yoke isn't working right. I wanted to hook the exhaust up, but I realized I don't have 3-inch V-bands on me. So there's just been a whole lot of things that have been little issues, right? There's still a bunch of work to be done, and there's just these little issues. We gotta wait for parts, little issues, wait for parts, whatever. I wanted to get this thing to a point, I was hoping in one video where we went from what it was to actually driving it out of the garage. But as prepared as I thought I was, you'll find, and I'm sure you guys all do this, you get into a project and then you forget about these little things that had you hung up, and we get so focused on, well, I got the big things, I got the motor, I got the trans, I got the converter, I got the shifter, I got this, and sometimes the little things beat you up. So that's gonna have to be it for this video. We did make quite a bit of progress. I mean, we're, a few parts away, and the last 10% takes 80% of the time, or whatever the case may be, but we're very close to having this thing running and driving condition. So the bad part, the unfortunate part is we've got to get back to racing, because this weekend we've got 2 races. We got a doubleheader coming up. We're going to race Friday and Saturday. Saturday will be at Battle of South Mountain up in Pennsylvania. So I know a bunch of people are asking, am I going to be there? Am I going to be there? Yes, we're going to be there. But in order to do that, these are front half of the track races. We could probably leave the Nova alone, but I do still want to get the Nova in here, try to get some things figured out about it. I do want to get it over to my buddy's house, see if we can scale it. There's work that needs to be done to the race car to be ready to race for this weekend. So unfortunately right now, this thing is just going to have to get the hood tossed on it, and it's going to have to be pushed outside while I order a few more parts that we're going to need to finish it all the way out. I'm really happy with how it's coming out so far. For the most part, I mean, there's some housekeeping stuff I haven't done yet, but for the most part, it's coming out very clean. It looks very clean. It's very neat and organized, and I've been taking my time because I wanted it, it's still just an old shit box, but I wanted kind of some of the other parts of the car to match how nice and how good I feel about the interior. So we've got a great running 4.8, has great oil pressure. I managed to adapt the old school mechanical oil pressure gauge. That's working great. I haven't figured out the adaptation for the mechanical temperature gauge yet. Maybe we'll do that, maybe not, I'm not sure, but I'm really looking forward to driving this thing down the road and having some fun with it, and really putting the kids in the back, taking the missus out, and just being able to go whale on it. That's part of the other reason I know what's going to happen. Mallory's going to want to drive this thing, and I want to be able just to throw her the keys and say, hey, go for it. So where I could just eliminate the power steering for now, I really want to get it hooked up because I want her to be able to enjoy it as well. There's probably more stuff on the list I haven't told you about. There's still other things missing, whatever the case may be. But that's going to have to be it for today, guys. I've been spending quite a lot of time trying to get this done, and 7,000 trips to the parts store and everything else, but it's time to throw in the towel on it just for a little bit. Once we go hit this race, then we can come back next week. Hopefully some of my parts will be in. We can get jumping back on it. I know we've got a mess of upgrades that are piling up in the background. If you guys follow us on Facebook or Instagram, you've already seen some of them, and I know that there's more on the way. So there's going to be a bunch of stuff happening in this car. We just need to get to the finish line. The other thing too is that we've got some races this weekend, but at the end of the month we've got Clifton's race, State of the Union, which is $25,000 to win, no buy-in, it's free entry. He's paying out to like 8 or 10 spots or something. It's crazy. It's one of the best payout structures I've ever seen in a no prep race. If you make it to the final 8, he hands you $250. Then if you make it to the final 4, I think he hands you $1,000. And then if you make it to the final 2, he hands you $1,500. And then whoever wins gets another $15,000. So it's not even like, if you make it to the final 8 at the driver's meeting, he's handing you cash, which is one of the coolest things that I've ever seen out of a no prep race. And I really hope more people, you know, take to that, because I think it would make for better class turnouts. I think it'd make for a better overall experience. I know when I start getting into those numbers, you know, it doesn't happen often, but when it does, if I'm in a final 4 or final 2 scenario, you know, we did it a couple times last year, my mind's already on it. Hey, are we splitting? What are we doing? Number one, mainly because it's racing. Anything can happen. Anything can happen, and it would suck to, in my opinion, the way that I treat it, I'm always that guy that's like, I would rather split something, because I'd rather go home with something than, you know, even if I think I got you covered, I'd still rather split, because something stupid could happen. You know, we could spring a little leak, we get water on the tire, or, you know, something could have happened with the tune-up, or there's so many variables that, to me, it's always just worth it. And all of these other races, like when you go race X275, you know, they pay out to the semifinals or beyond or whatever. So I think we should too. And I think it'll make more people interested in coming to the race, because there's a lot of people, myself included, I don't think I'm going to win the, you know, the 25,000. Just being realistic of what I think the car can do and what other competitors can do. But if I feel like I can make the top 8 and I can make some money, you know, that makes me more inclined to want to go. I'm going to go regardless, because it's Clifton. That's my boy, and he's throwing a badass race, and it's going to be an awesome time. They're doing streetcar stuff on Friday, small tire on Saturday. Maybe, possibly, if this thing gets finished up, we can bring both. You know, we'd have to drive one and trailer the other, but that's what this is for. This thing is for being driven. So let's see what's going on. What I do know is right now it's starting to rain, which ain't going to help our process, but we need to get this thing at least wrapped up to a point where it can be pushed out of the garage again, covered up, everything, and I can get to ordering the parts I need so we can get this project done. But, man, I'll tell you what, this little 4.8 is sounding pretty good. Oh, I know you guys are going to ask too. We swapped out the carbs. I did that on purpose. The last carb I had on there, the big black one, the HP, it's way, way, way overfueled. It was always overfueled whenever I had it on any 5.3 or anything. And this one was in the trunk, so I figured it was worth the gamble of, why don't we take a stab at it and see if this thing will work better for our needs on the 4.8. I'm not a big carburetor guy. I don't want to be switching out jets and accelerators and all this, that, and the other. I'd rather just throw something on and we can ride with it like that. So for now, at the moment, it seems to be idling pretty good, everything. You know, I think we're still a little off on the fuel pressure, and we still got some stuff to figure out, but it's getting there. So don't worry. We will put nitrous on it. We will do everything else. It's getting plenty of upgrades. Just for now, the name of this game is simplicity. I want it to run and drive. I'd be completely happy if this thing on motor, if we could drive it an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours to a track and crack off a 13-second pass, I'd be really pretty happy. I think, honestly, could probably go high 12s, but we'll just, you know, we'll play it safe. So, on motor, like, we're not talking about nitrous now, but on motor, I think it can probably go high 12s. So we'll check it out. I will see you guys next time. As always, thank you for watching, liking, sharing, subscribing, doing a damn thing. You guys are the very best. I wish that I could have gotten this a little bit further for you guys, but it just didn't work out that way. I know, it's funny, I made a post on Facebook about it last night, and the amount of people who were like, yep, I exactly agree, I relate completely, this is exactly how it works out. You think you got everything you need, you turn around, you need some more stuff, whatever. So thank you guys for always being supportive, but we got to get back on the race program. So for now, this one's got to get out. I'll see you guys next time.